Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Build for Every Block. Before I unveil my first build, I need to come clean. And that is, I lied to you before we even started. I will not be making a build for every block. The main reason is because that's kind of dumb, but there's a few other good reasons for this as well. Firstly, a lot of the blocks are very similar. For example, all of the wood blocks, sandstone blocks, different stones and their counterparts have the same texture but in different shapes, and yet they count for more than one block. Making a build for every block would have so many builds with the same theme and in a row, because I'm doing it in alphabetical order, that this isn't the benefit of the series, as all of the builds will be easily differentiated because any of the blocks from the same category will be grouped together. The block list provided on the Minecraft wiki has 877 blocks total. It would be foolish of me to not group them together and just straight up cull some other ones because they're just not available in survival in any capacity. So I'll be using a much better list, my own list that I curated for this series, as it is 122 items long. This is substantially shorter than the wiki. However, I feel that every item is different enough from the others that I feel it is a good list with a wide selection and variety. And even though it may be shorter, I did not take the liberty of taking out any of the difficult blocks to work with, because that was kind of the main reason why I wanted to do this series in the first place. Now with that being said, let's get on to the first build, being Acacia. Before I start, I need to explain my thought process before I even place or destroy a single block. Acacia is probably one of the easier blocks to build with compared to some others, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't plan out this build at least a little. Since I'm going for a smaller build, only a few reference images are needed for this one, I'll be using an AI generated house, which will determine the overall shape of the build, and some chairs, because I like the design. I know, not your typical reference image, but it's still nice. You'll see where the design comes into play a little later. Back to the AI house. As you can see, the house is kind of built into the ground, so I'm going to incorporate that into the build and find a nice small hill to build into. And I think this should do just fine. Now obviously the image is a little more lush than a savanna, but if you get a little more imaginative, then you can see a nice hut design with some cobblestone. Now let's start with that nice stone. Since this is going to have some basic furniture, including furnaces, crafting tables, and storage, obviously the furnaces have to be in the cobblestone area, because it's a nice stone on stone blending area, and I can get away with some other nice details. Now on with the accents of the basement. Clearly furnaces use coal, so I'm going to add some coal, blackstone, and basalt blocks for some of the nice smoke effect coming out of the furnaces, but also so I can include the actual fuel somewhere for a little realism. Now let's finish the walls. This will include some stone brick, stone, cobblestone, and andesite, as these blend well together, as well as acacia logs to help blend the top and bottom together by sharing a block. Also, it's nice to differentiate between the windows and the walls with a different gray block. Now for the floor. I didn't want a generic checkerboard, so I went a little different and used more of a cascading circle effect instead, as I think it ties in nicely with the roof rafters I'm going to be putting in a little bit. I also added a trap door for ease of access to the furnace level. Even though you'll be taking a bit of fall damage, I think it's worth it. As for the walls, even though they may not be that big, that doesn't mean I shouldn't use texture and depth to make them more appealing. The back wall is a nice cobble pattern to tie the lower level into the upper level, but I also used the same window pattern as below, the acacia logs with white stained glass panes. Obviously this house isn't very big, so I don't have much floor plan to fill, which is nice. Big houses allow me to be ambitious with designs, however it's more space to fill later with furniture. And as any builder will tell you, interiors are hard. But today we don't have much to put in, thankfully. Some chests, some crafting tables, and a chimney to finish up the interior of the main build. As for the front of the house, since it's open concept, no front wall is required, but the side staircase I wanted to include because I think it adds a lot to the entrance of the main floor. Simple half-sub staircase with trapdoor railings. Also, I added glass pane fences to the front as well because I think they look much better than regular wood fences. So the roof is a simple design. Jungle base with acacia trim and acacia logs for the edges and center. I also added a little horn-like thing on the end just because I think it adds a little extra character to the overall build, and the rafters will have a similar shape, so I think they work well together. But you know, this thing was kind of just a spur-of-the-moment addition, but I like it. Now remember the chairs mentioned earlier? Well, the back of those chairs are used for the rafters. I felt like the ceiling would be too empty had I not added something, and if I refer back to the AI imagery, then the house has rafters. Not that I need to follow this very beautiful house to a T, but being able to hang lighting off something more substantial than a few fence posts is quite nice, and filling empty space is also the name of the game. Now we aren't quite done yet, as we have some extra accessories to add to really finish up this build. First thing we'll do is the outdoor canopy with some extra storage. A cool building tip is that you can place carpet on string. You can barely see the string, so the carpet looks like it's floating to really sell the canopy of this little shelter. We'll obviously change out the ground a little to make it look like there's been some traffic in the tent, and to connect the house with a path. We'll also add a little pad with a nice reclined chair under a tree just to fill in a little extra space. And last we have the dock to add, just for a little flair and because I wanted to incorporate the river a little into the build, as the reference image had some water features that I thought I could integrate into the build. While it may not be that interesting, at least it gives the river a bit more purpose to the build rather than just existing in front of the build. So this is it for the Acacia build. It may be small, but I think it still has some character and purpose. I hope you guys enjoyed the first build of this series, and there will be many more to come. Over 100, in fact. Here's hoping I can actually turn some god-awful blocks into something palatable, or even, God forbid, good. But anyways, thanks for watching, and make sure to check out some of the other builds in my Build Showcase series as well, which is more of a time-lapse animation style series using Blender. Anyways, cheers.